Everyone was terrified of the snarling German shepherd, trainers, shelter staff, even his rescuers. No one dared go near him, until a fearless little girl stepped forward, looked him in the eyes, and did the unthinkable. What happened next left an entire shelter speechless, and changed both their lives forever. They called him Rogue. At the city shelter, his name was always spoken in hushed tones. Rogue wasn't just another rescue. He was the one no one dared to approach. He'd been found chained behind an abandoned warehouse, ribs visible through his mangled fur, a bite wound festering on his leg. But it wasn't the injuries that made him dangerous. It was his eyes. Cold, sharp, untrusting. Like he'd already decided the world had nothing left for him. Every time a staff member passed his kennel, Rogue lunged at the gate, teeth bared, barking ferociously. He destroyed every toy, shredded every blanket. Even the most seasoned handlers gave up. He's too far gone, they whispered. He doesn't want help. The notes on his file grew darker each week. Untrainable, aggressive, high risk. Visitors avoided his row entirely. The sound of his barking alone was enough to scare people off. Trainers tried treats, gentle voices, behavioral tactics. Nothing worked. Behind closed doors, conversations began. The kind no one wanted to admit. Rogue was costing too much. He wasn't getting better. And there were so many other dogs who needed homes. Euthanasia. The word lingered, unspoken but heavy. But what no one expected was that hope would come in the form of a tiny girl in a pink dress. It was a quiet Wednesday morning when the door to the shelter creaked open. A young couple stepped inside, holding hands with their daughter, barely 4 years old, dressed in a frilly pink dress and matching shoes. Her name was Lily. With her pigtails bouncing and a stuffed bunny tucked under one arm, she didn't look like someone about to change a life. "We're just here to look," her father said politely. The staff smiled and began showing them around, carefully avoiding Rogue's wing. "Let's stay on this side," one of them suggested. "Some dogs back there aren't ready for visitors." But Rogue had already sensed something. His barking erupted from the back like a thunderclap, deep, feral, explosive. It echoed through the shelter like a warning. Guests stopped in their tracks. Lily turned toward the sound, her eyes wide, not in fear, but in curiosity. Before anyone could react, she slipped from her mother's grasp and walked steadily toward the source of the noise. "Lily!" her mother cried out, rushing after her. But Lily didn't stop. She followed the noise down the hallway, past the "Do Not Enter" sign, straight toward the cage that everyone else avoided. Toward Rogue. The hallway echoed with the pounding of Rogue's paws as he hurled himself against the bars of his kennel. His snarls were vicious, primal, meant to terrify. And they usually did. Volunteers had turned back. Trainers had retreated. But Lily? She stood there, barely taller than the gate, staring straight at him. The shelter staff froze behind her. One of them reached for her arm, whispering, "Don't move, sweetheart." But Lily didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She simply looked into Rogue's wild eyes, as if trying to understand something the rest of the world had missed. Her small hand reached out, not through the bars, but just enough to show she wasn't afraid. Rogue stopped. Mid-growl, mid-snarl, he stopped. His chest heaved with heavy breaths. His eyes locked onto hers. For the first time in weeks, his body was still. The room went silent. A moment passed. Then another. Rogue tilted his head, just slightly. The growl dissolved into a soft, confused whimper. His ears lowered. His tail, once stiff and alert, gave a tiny twitch. It wasn't submission. It wasn't trust. It was the very first crack in a wall that had been built out of pain. And Lily had found it. The next morning, Lily was back, this time with permission. Her parents had hesitated, fearful after the day before. But something about Rogue's change had even the staff curious. A deal was made. Lily could visit, but only with the gate between them and under strict supervision. Rogue was pacing when she arrived, agitated by the noise of the shelter as always. But the moment he saw her, he stopped. Completely. He walked to the bars and sat down, head tilted, waiting. Lily lowered herself to the floor, crossing her legs. She pulled out a picture book and began reading aloud, her voice soft and sweet. Rogue watched intently. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just listened. For over an hour, Lily read to him, laughed, and talked like they were old friends. She didn't mind the scars on his face or the way his teeth showed when he breathed. To her, he wasn't scary. He was just lonely. By the end of the visit, Rogue had done something no one had seen in months. He lay down near the gate, his head resting on his paws, his eyes slowly closing. And in that moment, a shelter full of hardened hearts dared to feel hope again. The visits became routine. Every afternoon, Lily would arrive with her picture books, tiny snacks in her backpack, and that same fearless smile. Rogue now waited for her, ears perked, tail wagging softly when she appeared. The shelter staff watched in disbelief. This wasn't the same dog. One day, Lily asked if she could feed him by hand. Everyone froze. "That's too dangerous," a staff member said. But Rogue hadn't shown a single sign of aggression in days. Not with her. After a long discussion, they decided to try. Carefully, with thick gloves and a trainer standing by, Lily reached through the bars, holding out a small dog treat. Rogue approached slowly, eyes locked on hers. No growl, no tension, just stillness. Then, with delicate precision, he took the treat from her tiny fingers, his teeth never touching skin. You could have heard a pin drop. "He's different with her," a trainer whispered. "It's like he knows." Lily giggled and clapped. Rogue let out a soft huff, almost like a sigh of contentment. The fear in the room faded. Staff who had once avoided his kennel now stood closer, watching in awe. And slowly, the word untouchable began to lose its meaning. It had been nearly 2 weeks since Lily's first visit, and everything about Rogue had changed. He no longer barked at the staff. He ate calmly. He even allowed one handler to brush his coat through the bars. But one thing hadn't changed: his loyalty to Lily. She was his anchor, his peace. One morning, Lily asked a question no one expected. "Can I see him without the gate?" The room fell silent. Her parents exchanged nervous glances. The staff hesitated. Even the trainers looked unsure. "It's a risk," someone said. "He's never been out of that kennel around people." But Lily's calm confidence never wavered. "He won't hurt me." After careful preparation, they agreed. The room was cleared. Trainers stood ready. The gate was unlatched. It creaked open. Rogue stepped out slowly, his muscles tense, nostrils flaring as he scanned the room. He took one step, then another. Everyone held their breath. And then, he saw her. Lily stood with her arms open wide, smiling. Rogue's entire body softened. He walked up to her, steady, sure, and sat at her feet. Not a single bark, not a single growl, just a quiet moment that broke every rule and rewrote everything they thought they knew about him. Rogue was no longer the monster in the cage. After careful evaluations and emotional discussions, the shelter approved Lily's family for adoption. It wasn't a typical process. There were home checks, behavior assessments, and hours of supervised interaction. But everyone agreed. If Rogue belonged anywhere, it was with her. The day he left the shelter, the staff lined up to say goodbye. Some cried. Others simply stood in awe. The dog they once feared now walked calmly beside a little girl, his leash held gently in her tiny hands. At home, Rogue transformed even more. He followed Lily everywhere, from the kitchen to the backyard to the foot of her bed each night. He growled if strangers got too close but melted when Lily whispered to him. Her laugh was his cue for happiness. Her frown, his signal to lay his head on her lap. Their bond didn't stay hidden for long. A video of Lily hugging Rogue while reading him a bedtime story went viral. Headlines followed. The dog that only trusted a child. Trainers reached out. Behaviorists studied the footage. But Lily, when asked what made her so brave, just smiled and said, he was never bad. He just needed someone to believe in him. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe. More stories that restore faith in humanity await.